1 a.m. on the night before Easter, Moscow is drenched in the sickly yellow glow of candles and the haunting echo of church choirs. Inside the Grand Cathedral of Christ the Savior, Putin, the president of 140 million people, stands in prayer, projecting the image of a Russia that is peaceful, holy, and untouchable. But war does not care about God. Exactly 7 miles southwest of that cathedral, a white tulip delivery truck sits quietly on the roadside with its engine idling. The driver takes a long drag from his cigarette in the freezing air, then silently flips open the red plastic cover on his tablet. A blood-red line of numbers begins ticking down. 8 minutes and 40 seconds. Right below that countdown of death, the satellite radar shows its crosshairs fixed on a single red dot, Vnukovo Airport. The private cigar lounge of the ruling class. The velvet rope parking lot of oligarchs and top brass generals. And tonight, tucked behind the heavy security cordon of VIP Terminal B's apron, a giant IL-76 transport aircraft lies still in the dark. Hidden inside its belly are 3 Kh-47 M2 Kinzhal hypersonic missiles. That is right, 3 strategic daggers, each weighing nearly 9,500 pounds, resting quietly on tightly wrapped racks. The entire Russian nation has its eyes closed, waiting for an Easter miracle, completely unaware that in exactly 15 minutes, what is about to fall on Vnukovo is a fiery death sentence. Every elite magic act in Vegas begins with a sleight of hand to pull your attention away from the real move. And tonight, the side stage has been set north of Moscow. At exactly 2 a.m., a delivery truck carrying the logo of an Easter cake company quietly swings open its cargo doors. Out of that pitch-black cavity, 12 small Pegasus FPV drones launch into the sky in perfect unison. Their destination is not Vnukovo, but a giant magnet built specifically to suck in anti-air fire Sheremetyevo civilian airport. The instant the phased array radar of the Pantsir S-1M system sweeps across those tiny signatures loitering at 1,500 feet, the electronic brain of the Russian military instantly and confidently matches the pattern to an old playbook. It lunges aggressively, exactly like an amateur NFL defender biting on a pump fake from a veteran quarterback. Inside the cramped control cabin, reeking of sweat and cheap tobacco, the officer immediately slams his thumb down on the bright red firing button and wakes the machine. The turret roars as it spins. The hydraulic launch tubes jolt backward violently, hurling out blinding orange pillars of fire that tear through the dead silence of the Moscow suburbs. A barrage of 57 E-6 interceptor missiles erupts from their launchers with terrifying force, ripping through the sky at speeds pushing Mach 2.8. That is more than 2,100 miles per hour, frantically hunting the swarm signal. Once the sensors on the 57 E-6 detect optimal proximity, the fuse triggers instantly, tearing each missile apart in mid-air and creating a cloud of tens of thousands of razor-sharp tungsten fragments. That red-hot storm of shrapnel sweeps across the sky like a metallic rainstorm, smashing into and shredding the fragile carbon frames and cheap plastic shells of the Pegasus drones. The decoy swarm is annihilated instantly under overwhelming mechanical violence, reduced to burned scraps fluttering down onto the frozen grass. Inside that stifling control station, the Russian air defense crew is probably high-fiving and cheering as the red dots vanish from their screens all at once. They are too busy getting drunk on that cheap victory to notice the brutal truth hanging right above them. They just generously burned through a volley of radio-guided golden arrows worth up to $200, 000, each just to destroy battery-powered FPVs. You could practically buy off an Amazon shelf for around $800. It is a blind, muscular cash burn that would make even a hardened Wall Street broker wince in pain. But the true masterpiece of this trick is not the economics. It is the attention shadow effect. Any seasoned military mind understands that the ring of fire protecting Moscow is an integrated air defense network. It behaves like a living organism. The moment those 12 Pegasus drones deliberately made noise in the northern sky, the Russian military's entire central nervous system was manipulated instantly. The giant phased array radars of the S-400 complex in Dubna and the A-50 AWACS aircraft overhead immediately redirected their electromagnetic focus, funneling 80% of their processing power north toward Sheremetyevo to evaluate the threat. And that is the deadly chain reaction. While all the giant strategic eyes of the Kremlin stared wide open at the north, the southwestern corridor leading to Vnukovo suddenly slipped into a surveillance blind spot, protected only by isolated low-altitude systems. And in that exact instant, when the spine of attention was snapped in half dozens of miles away to the southwest, the tulip delivery truck quietly opened its doors. The real FPV Mammoth assassins finally unfolded their wings in silence, gliding just above the frozen tree canopy, heading straight for the Vnukovo VIP apron. It sounds like the kind of reckless setup any hardcore military analyst would mock as a trashy Hollywood script. Strategic hypersonic weapons stored in the middle of a civilian executive terminal. But the battlefield does not care about scripts, and the answer lies in the ultimate mixture of arrogance and desperation that defines the 21st century geopolitical chessboard. When major airbases like Engels are watched so intensely by American satellites that they can practically count the faded runway paint, Russian logistics commanders were forced to play a reckless hand of Texas Hold'em. They used the luxurious authority of Vnukovo itself as an invisibility cloak, betting everything that Kiev would never dare strike the velvet playground of the elite. It was a sly move, like the mafia hiding contraband in the trunk of the mayor's Cadillac because nobody believes a patrol cop would ever dare pull it over. But they forgot one unwritten rule from Wall Street. The more a vault brags about its armor, the more hackers love searching for the back door. Tonight, that dirt-cheap drone swarm gliding under frozen branches is about to make Moscow pay a credit card bill worth tens of millions. Now, if you are wondering how this swarm got its hands on a detailed 3D flight map precise enough to thread through the defense grid, the bosses at the US National Reconnaissance Office would absolutely stand at a podium in their tailored suits and swear they never leaked sensitive intelligence. But what an incredible coincidence. Some unnamed tech specialist in some anonymous NATO country just happened to forget to turn on a firewall and left an encrypted data port wide open at exactly 11:58 p.m. That, my friends, is exactly how top-tier military alliances operate in the 21st century. No signatures, no receipts, and absolutely no fingerprints at the scene. The clock hits 6 a.m., and at that exact moment, the infamous Krasuka 4 electronic warfare system officially powers up, turning a 186-mile radius into a dead electromagnetic desert. GPS signals collapse instantly. Radio waves are suffocated. Standard control links are choked out on the spot. This is the very weapon Izvestia once proudly described as the invisible shield guarding the motherland. The same beast that has fried the electronics of countless Ukrainian drones before. But the engineers in Kiev anticipated Krasuka waking up 3 full weeks ago, so the steel swarm heading toward Vnukovo does not need GPS at all. It is guided by an inertial navigation system paired with optical terrain matching technology. It is like a blind man tapping his way forward with a cane, except the cane is powered by highly sophisticated AI. Do not underestimate that detail, because this exact development is rewriting global defense doctrine in real time. Just look east. This is the same porcupine strategy that is giving Beijing's generals cold sweats when they sketch invasion scenarios for the Taiwan Strait. The PLA understands perfectly well that the giant electronic warfare stations lining China's coastline could become rusting junk against autonomous FPV swarms launched by Taipei that do not rely on those radio links at all. A system that emits 0 radio waves gives the enemy absolutely nothing to jam. The Krasuka 4 is a $200 million monster built to choke the world's most advanced cruise missiles. Tonight it is about as useful as a Wi-Fi router locked inside a lead-lined basement. 8 a.m. While the 96 L6E surveillance radar, the so-called cheeseboard of the Pantsir S-1M, is busy sweeping the northern sky and chewing on the Pegasus decoy trap, the Mammoth FPV assassins are slipping smoothly along the terrain at a clean 60 to 70 feet, weaving through a natural radar blind zone to the southwest. But just as the Mammoths are flowing through that crack in the radar like ice water, an unpredictable variable suddenly drops into the equation and nearly rips the entire plan apart. At exactly 11 a.m., with the target only 1.4 miles from the airport perimeter, Mammoth number 3 suddenly catches the glare of car headlights on its feed. It is an FSB patrol vehicle, something completely absent from every intelligence report, barreling straight into the swarm's flight corridor. If that beam of light catches even one low-flying FPV, the patrol's dashcam will record it, and Ukraine's entire sleeper cell network inside Moscow could be facing a bloody death sentence. In that razor-thin instant, the pilot back in Kyiv has exactly 4 seconds to make a life-or-death decision. He grits his teeth and yanks the stick, ordering the entire Mammoth swarm to drop from 70 feet to just 30, pinning them so low their carbon props are practically trimming the frozen grass. The patrol car tears through the night, its blinding headlights sweeping right over the top of the drones with barely 6 feet to spare. The hearts of the men watching the monitors back in Kyiv must have stopped for a second. But do you know why that patrol car suddenly appeared to ruin the operation like some off-script disaster? This is where you see the sheer depth of the geopolitical underworld. 3 days earlier, Russian SIGINT operators accidentally intercepted a leaked radio transmission from a US Air Force RC-135 rivet joint orbiting above the Black Sea. The message fed the Kremlin a half-truth. Ukraine is about to use a stealth swarm to strike a strategic apron on the outskirts of the capital. The intelligence was accurate, but Washington and Kyiv were running a classic bait-and-switch. The coordinates hidden in that leak did not point to Vnukovo at all. They pointed directly at Domodedovo Airport, dozens of miles away. The FSB swallowed the bait, raised the entire grid to alert, and shifted its best patrol units toward Domodedovo to chase ghosts. The patrol car that nearly clipped the Mammoths was merely one out-of-sync unit trying to redeploy. At 0:14 a.m., the drone swarm officially crosses the Vnukovo perimeter fence, and the optical feed from the lead drone finally locks onto the massive silhouette of the target in the dark. But this is also the exact second the Pantsir S-1M guarding Terminal B wakes up, because a low-altitude infrared sensor cluster accidentally picks up the thermal trace of the swarm's motors. The Russian operator does not hesitate. He fires immediately, turning drones 1 and 2 into fireballs that crash down onto the tarmac. That brutal plot twist leaves the Ukrainians with exactly 4 aces left in their hand, forcing drone number 5, callsign Krashanka, to instantly activate tactical fiber-optic guidance mode. In Orthodox tradition, Krashanka are the hard-boiled eggs dyed bright red for Easter, not made to be admired, but to be smashed against each other in a brutal contest of shell strength. And tonight, the sleeper cell operator is performing exactly that ritual. The moment the ultra-thin 0.5mm fiber-optic cable begins spooling out from its tail, Mammoth number 5 becomes the hardest shelled egg in the sky, gliding forward in total radio silence. It accepts the sacrifice of speed, drops to a dangerously low altitude to protect its fragile glass lifeline, and prepares to ram itself straight into the enemy's million-dollar defense system to find out whose shell cracks first. The Pantsir operator is stunned as the RF tracking signal vanishes completely. The radar screen in front of him flattens into dead white static. You know that maddening feeling when you are streaming a great movie and the Wi-Fi cuts out in the middle. That is exactly the helplessness crushing the Pantsir crew right now, except the consequences are 1,000 times more catastrophic. Realizing the situation is slipping away, the air defense commander at Vnukovo frantically calls the S-400 base in Dubna and begs for support. The massive S-400 system instantly brings its gravestone radar online to search for the threat. But ironically, those tethered drones are flying at only 40 feet, completely buried beneath the system's radar horizon. 0:15 a.m. On the Vnukovo VIP Terminal B apron, a tragic and almost comic scene unfolds, stamped with the unmistakable signature of asymmetric warfare. The 4 surviving Mammoth drones glide gently over the roof of the Pantsir S-1M launcher at a distance of less than 100 feet. The Russian air defense crew below can hear the clean slicing sound of carbon props cutting through the freezing air with their own ears, and yet they are utterly powerless to make their million-dollar machine fire. The Pantsir's automated targeting logic simply cannot lock onto something that emits no radio waves and whose thermal trace is masked by the freezing winter night. That giant defense machine now looks as pathetic as a blind giant wildly swinging a sword at ghosts. The second they clear the final defensive wall, the optical feed from the Krashanka lead drone delivers a frame worth hundreds of millions back to command. Beneath the sickly yellow lights of the executive apron, the giant IL-76 strategic transport sits motionless, its rear cargo ramp hanging wide open. Inside that aluminum and steel belly sit 3 KAF-47 M2 Kinzhal hypersonic missiles resting quietly on glossy black plastic-wrapped cradles. They have caught the Kremlin's great white shark with its stomach fully exposed. The sleeper cell operator, sweating inside the tulip truck just 7 miles away, does not waste even a fraction of a second. His gloved tactical hands tighten on the controls, handing killshot authority to the final drone in the formation, callsign Pisanka, named after the brightly decorated Easter egg that symbolizes destiny. Unlike standard drones, Pisanka is carrying a heavy 4PB-shaped charged thermobaric warhead beneath its belly. The FPV screams forward with a deafening whine, diving from 50 feet at maximum speed, pushing 80 miles per hour like a burning spear as it plunges into the darkness of the IL-76's cargo hold. In the world of serious military analysis, drone kill strikes never depend on the raw explosive power of the drone itself. They depend on a merciless principle of physics called sympathetic detonation. Ukraine's 4-pound thermobaric warhead is basically just a match. What they are trying to ignite is the tens of thousands of pounds of solid rocket fuel sleeping inside those Kinzhals. At exactly 0:16 a.m., Pasanka's nose touches the metal casing of the first hypersonic missile. The shape charge detonates instantly, compressing all of its energy into a focused jet of molten copper burning at 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That deadly plasma lance cuts through the Kinzhal's protective casing like a hot knife through butter, punching directly into the solid fuel chamber. A brief and horrifying silence blankets the VIP apron before Vnukovo Airport is torn apart by the most catastrophic explosion in the history of the Russian capital. Nearly 30,000 pounds of hypersonic weaponry and thousands of gallons of aviation fuel ignite at once, creating a colossal blinding orange fireball that completely consumes the IL-76. The shockwave tears across the concrete with the force of a Category 5 hurricane, crushing nearby Gulfstream and Bombardier jets into mangled heaps of aluminum scrap. The thick, soundproof glass of VIP Terminal B shatters into millions of microscopic fragments that blast into the air, mixing with the scream of sirens echoing across southwest Moscow. Easter night in Moscow this year will not be remembered for hymns or yellow candles. It will be permanently etched into global military textbooks as a humiliating demonstration of an illusion collapsing in real time. When multi-million-dollar anti-aircraft systems can be brought to their knees by a few yards of fiber-optic cable and cheap 3D-printed plastic frames, the world is forced to confront a naked truth. No fortress is impregnable against those who know how to turn the enemy's complacency into its grave. Tonight, 140 million prayers officially went up in flames inside the burning cargo hold of that IL-76, leaving behind a cold lesson for every empire that still believes luxurious authority can protect it from the technological ghosts of the 21st century. Bye for now.